All right, welcome everybody. Today is March 24th. This is the TSC meeting for the CHIPS Alliance. I've got a number of folks here on the call. I've got Rob Maines, have Henry Cook, and Michael Gialda. This is Brian Warner. Henry, you want to call us to order here?
Yep, I would like to call the March 24th meeting of the TSC meeting to order.
Okay, sounds good. We have the meeting agenda is in GitHub. I've got CHIPS Alliance/TSC, and it's in the meetings directory. I have a couple of things on the agenda for today. So we recently had an email vote to establish an analog working group. So just reviewing the results of that, there were 2 out of 2 votes in favor of it. That was on March 5th. So maybe the first thing we can do in today's meeting is discuss what exactly this means and what the next steps are. I had put in a draft document which basically has, some basic biographical information about the working group, and we need to maybe figure out where to go from there. We've had one application come in for Sandbox from AIB. We can review that and hopefully vote on that as well. And then finally, I think we'll probably want to maybe just discuss a little bit about next week, the CHIPS Alliance workshop, which is coming up. So let's go ahead and get started. First thing, Michael and Henry, if we could go through and review the open PRs. We've got a few in there to take care of. First one's the meeting minutes from February 24th. If you want to just take a quick look at those and let me know if you're good to merge those, we can just get some positive reviews and merge them in.
Is anyone presenting them on screen, or should we just go there?
I can present on screen. Give me just 1 second here.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, there we go. Just 1 moment here. We can bring this up. So here are the meeting minutes. Typically for for the future, whoever's capturing the minutes, whether it's me or somebody else, it's good to get these up kind of early, and then just wait for people to take a look through them and approve them. And once we get enough approvals on them, then we can just merge them directly in. But last meeting was pretty straightforward. We went through the Sandbox applications for Rocket Chip and for Chisel, ended up voting to accept the Sandbox applications, went through the CLA, and then also discussed the CHIPS Alliance Commons. So if you guys are both good with this, then just go ahead and approve the PR. We can merge that in. The next thing on the agenda was to discuss the analog working group. So just kind of recapping some of the discussions which have happened in various places, both the last TSC meeting and then also in the governing board meeting. We discussed forming an analog working group, which is basically to be a place where we can do work in advance of having analog projects merged into CHIPS Alliance. The idea here is that our existing governance basically says work groups are formed either by the TSC voting that this is something they need to focus on and want to have a place to be able to collaborate with each other that has the various different tools that we can offer, or they're formed by having an actual project in that particular space. In this case, there's clear need for a central place for discussion around analog work. And so that was why this was set up. That said, Michael, you and Henry are both certainly better versed in this need than I am. So I put in a PR with an initial file, initial description of the working group, but we could really use somebody to contribute maybe a mission and some other information on what exactly the scope of this would be and how often you want to meet and so forth. So it'd be great if somebody could just maybe push some patches against this against this document, and we can start using this as the base for the work around the working group. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Makes sense to me too. I was just reviewing the meeting minutes.
Oh, sorry.
No.
Moved on quickly.
Try to multitask so that we don't get stalled on like. So with those descriptions, definitely at some point we'll probably have to have those descriptions correspond to the stuff we have on the website as well, which is always a pain to keep up to date. So we're probably eventually going to distribute that between the working groups themselves, just to make sure that these things are up to date. But I think, yes, we should have the description of the working groups. And of course, the analog group that we just established is a special case where we're trying to like create that ecosystem and the enthusiasm around it. But I think it's worthwhile to like keep a list and an explanation of, you know, what do the groups actually do, and a repository is probably easier to do, really, for you know, technical people. And then the website, we could base the information there on whatever is in the repo.
Yes.
It will be a good source of information that we could ask the working groups to keep up to date, and we should just have to care about the marketing message reflecting what the technical groups are doing. But as it is today, it's like marketing content that actually kind of depends on technical people. Technical people are never going to go and update a website
Right.
on their own.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Michael. And it does also underscore the reason why we're asking existing CHIPS Alliance projects to go through this whole process as well. I mean, the best way to know how to describe the projects that are in the CHIPS Alliance is to have the projects actually put that together themselves and to do it in a consistent way. So that's kind of a nice segue into the AIB application, which came in for the sandbox projects. So we're cruising right along today. Do you want to move into that?
Yeah, that's fine. So do you want to leave the analog working group PR open and add to it?
That'd be awesome. Yeah. I've put in the basics here. I can put in, we're probably going to need a Zoom link and let's see, anything else? It's probably the main thing. I'll generate a custom Zoom link. Once you decide when you want to meet, let me know and I'll put an entry on the calendar as well. I mean, these are all things which are available to CHIPS Alliance projects. So the same things that are available to the project should also be available to the working group.
Yeah, the meetings will probably start happening not immediately, in the sense that we need to first kind of get back to the people already in the CHIPS Alliance and get them to get involved. I mean, specifically Intel and Berkeley. And then, you know, a lot of our planning around how to get people to, you know, put their analog stuff in chips, right? This could happen in this forum instead of like the TSC meetings or marketing. So to establish those meetings, I don't think we should, like, you know, like first establish a meeting and then watch nobody come, right? Like we have to come and ask a bunch of people that we know are interested in this to set up that meeting. And then we can have, you know, external people also join. Like they don't necessarily need to even be part of CHIPS Alliance because our technical meetings are open. And once those meetings are happening regularly, then we'll have this data. Yeah. But like just finding a time without actually having people to meet is not possible. So, you know, the calendar entry for this will be empty for now, right? There is no meeting until we get people that actually want to meet and talk analog, and we'll have to prod it a little bit initially. And I think, you know, Bora and Dave will be helpful in that regard. They've shown a lot of interest, but also kind of they've been very kind in supporting this initiative. So I think hopefully they'll be interested to join such a meeting, and then of course we can also join it and like help it tag along with the hope of getting more members in. And even if some people don't join as members, they might start joining our meetings. Or when those meetings become regular, that's when we put them here.
Do you think that Dave and Bora could help seed like an initial agenda to try to garner interest in people joining the meetings?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think there, and one other thing we should do is try to get the universities that care about analog to join.
Well, that's why I asked. My question was a loaded question, I guess, but in terms of like seeding initial agendas that like I could share with Professor Pan at UT Austin to see if he would be interested in either himself participating or having one of his students participate, and the same thing for Professor Kong at UCSD.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't think it's always a chicken and egg, right? Like the agenda is obviously unknown yet, because like it's going to be dictated by the people that join, in a sense. So if there's people interested in, generally speaking, making analog design more reusable and open source, and not just working away in their own corner, but like potentially collaborating with others and integrating different tools together and things, and like reusing concepts and potentially code between their projects, they should join proactively. And we can't upfront tell them what the agenda is going to be, because it's going to be dictated by the stuff that happens. Look at the tools work group, for example. Basically, we meet and we talk about the projects that we cover, and then if more people join, the discussion shifts towards the projects that they care about, etc. Right? So it's highly dictated by whoever actually joins the meetings, and preferably joins CHIPS Alliance. So of course, I don't know what your discussions with those people have been, but hopefully,
I haven't had any discussions at all. I'm thinking from this perspective, right? That I guess maybe from a business perspective or company perspective, right? But if we want someone to set time aside on their calendar, it helps to have an initial idea as to what the meeting is going to be about.
Of course.
See what I'm saying? So let's right. So let's say like the idea is to develop a common or shared analog tool framework, right? That's broken down into different component architectures, right? So perhaps Bora could lead like an introductory conversation on that. Andrew Kahn could talk a bit about what Open Road is, and then maybe Professor Pan could talk about how some of his work could plug into such a framework, and then start driving towards an open contributory framework. That's an idea.
Yeah,
anyway.
That is a good idea, but I'd add to it like that we also want to congregate analog IP and potentially analog IP generators as well, because like if we tell people, hey, we're going to work towards having like a shared tools framework, it might occur that actually people's projects are not really compatible in that way, right? Because
I agree. I was just suggesting as an idea for a topic.
So it's a great topic as one of many, or like one of two or three. So we should absolutely like write down a few topics that we're going to cover, but I deliberately don't want to make it too concrete, because we might just say the wrong thing, or like
No, you're right. You're right.
I'm not knowledgeable enough about analog to try to dictate that, and of course Bora and Dave can help. But yeah,
they should be the ones doing it.
It should be a bunch of topics. It should be like, one is like, generally speaking, tools, analog tools and methodologies, and another should be just analog IP and making people aware of all the IP that exists, and potentially looking at how to do effective tape outs of existing analog IP using Skywater, like That I think is the kind of topics that should be covered in the analog work group. And in general, like just changing people's approach to analog and trying to think how things can be automated better and how costs can be shared. So it's kind of the same story as for anything else in chips, really, just with an analog twist to it. But yeah, we can definitely have a few bullet points that we share with people and have Bora and Dave like opinionate whether those topics make sense. And yeah, hopefully that's enough to get all the other people to join, especially, as I'm saying, especially the universities for whom it's free. So hopefully for them, it's not about what's my bang for the buck, because the buck is 0.
No, I think that's good.
And again, we'll have to explain that you don't need to put your IP into chips upfront, right? Like that's not what we're asking you to do, because like all of those people we're trying to talk to, these are of course people with some kind of IP, or most of them, especially the universities. So they might think chips is coming at them to like hijack their IP, but it's not. It's like we're kind of coming to them so that we can seed an ecosystem, and potentially, of course, if they're interested, if they want to, we'd love to have their projects join chips, but like it's not a mandatory requirement.
Right. No, that's good.
So I've just mentioned a few things I can probably add to the mission here.
That's great. Thank you. Yeah, that'll be helpful. Okay, so we'll just leave that PR open. Then when everybody's comfortable with it, we can just merge it in. It's great to see this moving forward, though. Thank you for all the help on all that. That's context I wouldn't have been able to add myself. Okay, so moving forward here, give me just one moment to bring my screen back up. There we go. The only other thing that I had for today was to go through, there's a, oh, actually, hey, we got 2 applications here. So AIB and OmniExtend are both new sandbox applications. So let's maybe go through these kind of quickly here. We only have a few minutes left before the top of the hour, and I do need to jump to something else. However, it would be good for the 2 of you as the TSC members to review these sandbox applications, and then we can provide any feedback that there may need to be, and then hopefully vote to accept these projects in. So first project was AIB. This one came in just a few days ago here. It came in from Dave Kellett at Intel. There are a couple of things here. This specific application looks like it covers both specification and some of the code and utility repos for AIB. I had responded back to Dave and had asked if he could also enumerate out the other open source licenses that are involved here. Given the specification license is OWFA 1.0 currently. So we should probably have that here in the application as well. A couple of other things we ought to include in here. Looks like need some links to the issue trackers, and then maybe a statement of why the project wants to join the CHIPS Alliance. Once we have that, I think, though, we could probably handle this offline instead of waiting until the next TSC meeting. Does anybody have anything else they would want to add on that?
No, that seems fine. I think we should maybe make it clear to people that like you can use GitHub itself as an issue tracker. Like you don't necessarily need to have a separate thing set up.
Good point.
And maybe same for the website. In the absence of a separate website, the like README on your top level repo is kind of becomes your landing page.
Yeah, that's a good point, Henry. I think in general, we don't want to communicate. Don't overcomplicate this. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Absolutely.
I think listing, like, maybe, I don't know, maybe we should change the template to make that the default value or something, like, you know, have a note in there that's like, you know, linked to your GitHub issue tracker if you don't have anything else or something.
Yeah. I can, I'll do that. I'll update the template for that. I think we can probably fast track that. That seems like a pretty useful, but also trivial change. So we can take an action and do that. Okay, so I'm going to say on this one, we're probably not quite ready to go through and review it just yet. I did see a PR to revert this, so it may be that it was landed prematurely anyhow. So we can, I'll follow up with Dave on that one. There's also the application for OmniExtend. This came in from Western Digital. Just taking a quick look through it. So I don't really have a whole lot of questions on this one. It's, you know, short and succinct, very to the point.
Yeah, this looks good to me.
Michael, any thoughts on this one?
Looks good to me.
I do see the open source licenses listed as Creative Commons. We might need to ask about that one. So that's seems to be in.
Oh, you're right. I didn't see that. This is the spec, right?
Yeah, at the moment it's just a spec.
Yeah, and that I think is why they chose like a. Oh wait, I need to open a new window. Creative Commons, which is not ideal, of course, but you don't typically choose it for code. Yeah. That's weird. It's wrong. It's actually Apache.
Okay. Well, so let's maybe go back to Dijon here and just
yeah, in the
repo
they say Apache, and yeah, it has a license.apache2 file and so on. So
okay,
it's just
all right. I'll take an action. I'll respond back to Dijon here, and we can get this corrected, and then maybe again for this one do a vote out of band from the TSC meetings. Are you both comfortable with
over email?
Yeah, sounds good. And then we'll just maybe follow the same process we used for the last vote, the one that we used to set up the analog working group, where I'll send an email out to the TSC, record the results, and then next TSC meeting we'll just go through and review any votes which happened over email, just so that it's on the record.
That makes sense to me.
Okay, great. Henry and Michael, do you have anything else for today?
I did have one quick question myself.
Oh, Rob, sure.
This is just on the artificial intelligence work group. Does that exist yet? And anything, of note on that? The reason I'm asking is because I was approached by the AI Hardware Summit about having Chips Alliance participate in that, at least as a friendly mention of what our involvement, and then also asked about if I would be willing to host a panel conversation. And then also I was considering approaching a contact at IBM in the artificial intelligence group there. He's a IBM fellow, and then also a Microsoft distinguished engineer in artificial intelligence as well. So I just wanted to see if there was anything I should be aware of relative to that topic.
These are the other panelists? I didn't catch that.
No, I'm sorry. So this is about, they're not panelists. So the one gentleman is in the is a IBM fellow in the artificial intelligence area. He is at MIT, and he does work with the IBM chip development work in artificial intelligence, which is in Albany, New York. So that's one area. The other area is Microsoft.
And I just didn't catch what context they are mentioned here. those two
The
people?
context is I want to start reaching out to other companies and people I know from my past lives.
Right. Okay.
And yeah, so I apologize for not being clear. So the context is what is our current activity level in the artificial intelligence arena, and in particular as it relates to the TSC. Sorry.
It isn't much. We'd like it to be there, and now there's plenty of ideas what we could be doing, but it's typically, the topic typically starts around like specific open source projects, specs or code or both, especially. So we haven't had, apart from mentors, AI stuff that's strictly dependent on their own proprietary tools, which kind of makes it difficult to like build a community around it, because like obviously anyone using that will need to be also using a specific set of tools. We just don't have an IP in that area now.
Okay.
We of course like to be proactive, and definitely it makes sense to reach out to these people, but and there are some interesting projects out there in machine learning. But some of them are, for example, like TVM is an example. It's a framework which also has VTA, which is IP for machine learning on FPGA. But that is part of Apache Foundation, I think, right? For example, so I don't think they're looking to join some kind of Chips Alliance. Okay. Instead, they could collaborate. And they should collaborate, and would love to collaborate with them. But if we can identify, like projects, be it accelerator IP or some kind of machine learning related tooling for ASIC development or related to ASIC development, that would be a great, kernel to build around such a working group. And certainly it's worthwhile talking to people in this area to try to make that group happen. Some of the work we could also connect to and potentially even incorporate is, the CFU work we're doing with RISC-V, like FPGA-based acceleration of machine learning, right? So that's one potential topic we could accommodate, but it's mostly FPGA focused, really. Which shouldn't be a problem, of course, but in terms of like specific kind of ASIC focused, AI related activity, there isn't much we're in contact with, at least today. Okay. There might be, we should definitely talk to Western Digital about it, because I know the interest to form such a group and so on has been coming also from them. And there is some work they're involved with, which potentially they would be interested in seeding this group with. But yeah, nothing very concrete. Okay. Like we'd have to talk to people and like come up with a plan. Like as compared to the analog work group, for example, there it's like a concrete group of companies that seemed at least to be willing to collaborate about, around specific projects. Also tentative and also, proactive on from us, but at least there's some concrete actions to be taken, like make those people talk to these people, and like let's have this project join Chips Alliance, etc. It's something we have to make happen, but at least we know what. In the AI space, I think we don't even know the what, right? And let alone the how of it. But we should figure it out. I mean, we should have an AI work group at some point in the future. But I don't think it's been formally established, really. I think it's only been mentioned in slides so far.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
Okay. And last thing, so would the three of you like to say something about the workshop that's coming up next week?
Well, I think it's a great opportunity for us to update the community on the work that's progressed so far in Chips Alliance, and where we're trying to go to as a community.
And if anybody's looking for the link to that, it's on chipsalliance.org as well. Okay, I don't have anything else for today. Henry, Michael, Rob, anything else you'd like to add?
Not from my side.
All right, Henry, would you like to close us up then?
Yep. This concludes this meeting of the Technical Steering Committee.
Very good. Thank you, everybody, and we'll meet here again next month.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
All right.